The Yule Tiangjun, the message that changed everything, the transmission, reached every corner of the galaxy within hours. It came from the Sovereign Collective, the most powerful alliance in known space. For 3,000 years, they had ruled over 400 species across 60,000 star systems. Their word was absolute. Their judgment was final. No civilization had ever refused their commands and survived to tell the story. The message was broadcast on every frequency, translated into every known language, and delivered with the cold precision that had made the collective feared throughout the stars. It was addressed to one species alone, humanity. The human race was charged with violations of collective law. They had expanded beyond their permitted boundaries. They had developed weapons without authorization. They had refused to submit their technology for inspection. The punishment was clear and non-negotiable. Immediate surrender. Complete disarmament. Permanent supervision. Earth had 72 hours to respond with unconditional acceptance. Failure to comply would result in total elimination. Across the galaxy, billions of beings watched and waited. Some felt pity for the humans. Others felt satisfaction. Many species remembered how humanity had arrived in the stars only 3 centuries ago, bold and reckless, claiming worlds with a speed that made older civilizations nervous. Now they would finally learn their place. The clock started counting down at the silence begins hour 1 past. No response came from Earth. Hour 12 arrived. Still nothing. By the end of the first day, the silence from humanity had become the most discussed topic in galactic news. Analysts filled the airwaves with speculation. Perhaps the humans were drafting their surrender terms. Perhaps they were too frightened to respond. Perhaps their government had collapsed in panic. But as the second day passed, and then the third, something changed. The silence stopped feeling like fear. It started feeling like something else entirely. Something deliberate. Something calculated. Supreme Coordinator Thalen stood in the central command chamber of the collective, staring at the holographic display of Earth's solar system. Around him, the council members argued in a dozen different languages, their voices rising in frustration and confusion. "They mock us with their silence," hissed Commander Vex, his 4 arms crossing over his armored chest. "We should send the fleet immediately and turn their planet into dust." Thalen raised one hand for silence. He was old by any species standard, having served the collective for over 200 years. He had seen wars begin and end. He had watched civilizations rise and fall. And something about this situation made the scales along his spine tingle with unease. "No," he said quietly. "This is not mockery. This is strategy." Science advisor Kelra stepped forward, her crystalline body reflecting the blue light of the displays. Perhaps their communication systems have failed? Perhaps some disaster has struck their world? Thalen shook his head. "Their systems are functional. Our monitors confirm that internal Earth communications are active. They are speaking to each other. They simply choose not to speak to us." The room fell silent at this. The implications were staggering. To deliberately ignore the collective was not just rebellion. It was a statement of contempt. Shadows in the dark. The first disappearance happened on the 4th day. Scout Ship Meridian 7 was conducting a standard surveillance sweep near the outer edge of human-controlled space. Far beyond Neptune in the region, humans called the Kuiper Belt. The ship carried a crew of 15 and was equipped with the latest collective stealth technology. It should have been completely invisible to any human sensors. The ship sent its routine status update at 0600 Galactic Standard Time. Everything was normal. At 0610, the ship vanished. No distress call. No explosion detected. No debris field. One moment it existed on sensors. The next moment there was simply empty space. Supreme Coordinator Thalen ordered 2 more ships to investigate. They arrived at Meridian 7's last known position and found nothing. No wreckage. No radiation signatures. No trace that a ship had ever been there at all. Then they found something else. Floating in the vacuum, perfectly preserved, was a single object. A small metallic cube, no larger than a human fist, engraved with symbols in an ancient Earth language. The translation came back within minutes. It was just one word. Wait. The Council's growing fear. The Council chamber erupted into chaos. Some members demanded immediate military action. Others called for diplomatic channels to be reopened. A few, the wisest ones, suggested retreat. Thalen listened to them all, but his attention was focused on the data streaming across his personal display. More disappearances had been reported. A cargo freighter near Jupiter. A science vessel studying Saturn's rings. A diplomatic courier making a routine flight through the asteroid belt. All gone, all without trace. All leaving behind the same message. Wait. What are they waiting for? Commander Vex demanded. What game are they playing? Thalen enhanced the holographic display, zooming in on Earth's solar system. Something was different. The orbital patterns had changed. Structures that their surveys had marked as abandoned or destroyed were showing faint energy signatures. Old human colonies on Mars, on Europa, in the asteroid belt. All of them were coming back to life. They are not waiting, Thalen said slowly, realization dawning. They are preparing, and they have been preparing for a very long time. Science advisor Kelra moved closer to the display, her crystalline form shimmering with agitation. That is impossible. We have monitored human space for decades. Our intelligence is thorough. If they had hidden installations or secret weapons, we would know. But even as she spoke, new data appeared on the screens. Deep space sensors were detecting massive power surges throughout the solar system. Not from Earth itself, but from locations scattered across dozens of moons, asteroids, and orbital platforms. Structures that had seemed dead for centuries were awakening. Ancient protocols far from Earth. Buried beneath 3 kilometers of ice on Europa, something stirred. The facility had no name in any current human database. It had been built during the early expansion era, back when humanity was still learning to navigate the stars. Back when they were naive enough to believe that peace was guaranteed. Back before they learned that the galaxy could be cruel. The installation was called Bastion 9, and it had been sleeping for 217 years. Its systems had been designed to activate under only one specific circumstance. If humanity ever faced extinction-level threat from an external force, and if Earth's government went silent, then the bastions would wake, and they would make sure that if humanity fell, they would not fall alone deep within the ice. Machines older than any living human began to move. Reactors that had been cold for generations sparked to life. Computer cores that had been dormant started processing again. And in the central chamber, surrounded by walls of frozen water and ancient metal, something even more precious began to thaw. Cryopods. Dozens of them. Each one containing a human being who had volunteered centuries ago to sleep until they were needed. They were soldiers, scientists, strategists. The best that humanity had ever produced. They had gone to sleep in a time of peace, with the hope that they would never need to wake. Captain Darius Chon was the first to open his eyes. The cryo-fluid drained from his pod with a hiss of pressurized air. He took his first breath in over 2 centuries, his lungs burning with the shock of it. The AI's voice filled the chamber, calm and precise. Welcome back, Captain. Bastion protocol has been activated. Threat level, extinction. Time to prepare, unknown. Earth status, silent. Darius pulled himself from the pod, his muscles weak, but recovering quickly, thanks to the medical nanits in his bloodstream. Around him, other pods were opening. Other captains, other soldiers, other warriors who had made the same choice he had made so long ago. "How many bastions have activated?" he asked. The AI responded immediately. "All 47 bastions across the solar system are now online. Total awakened personnel, 6,312. Fleet assets, operational. Defense grids, operational. Dawnfire protocol, ready for authorization." Darius smiled grimly. The galaxy had forgotten about humanity's contingency plans. They had assumed that silence meant defeat. They were about to learn how wrong they were. A message the galaxy ignored, back in the collective's command chamber. Supreme Coordinator Thalon made a decision. "Recall all scout ships. Pull our forces back to defensive positions. Do not enter human space under any circumstances." Commander Vex stared at him in disbelief. "You cannot be serious. We are the Sovereign Collective. We do not retreat from primitives." Thalon turned to face him, his ancient eyes hard as stone. "Those primitives just made 15 of our ships disappear without firing a single shot. They have activated technology we did not know existed. And they are still silent. That silence is not weakness, Commander. It is a countdown." The holographic display flickered. New data appeared, and every being in the room froze. Throughout human space, hundreds of new energy signatures had appeared. Not ships, not weapons. Something else. Something vast. The translation algorithm struggled with the signal that followed. A broadcast in ancient human code that spread across every frequency. When it was finally decoded, it contained just 3 words. "Time's up. Run." And in that moment, the Sovereign Collective realized they had made a terrible mistake. They had given humanity 72 hours to surrender. But humanity had used those 72 hours to wake their guardians, to activate their hidden defenses, to remind the galaxy of something that had been forgotten. When humans go silent, they are not afraid. They are preparing. And now the preparation was complete. Asterisk the AWAK-9G, the fleet that should not exist. Collective's invasion force was the largest military assembly in recorded galactic history. 5,000 warships, 300 dreadnoughts, 75 carrier groups. Enough firepower to crack a planet's crust or boil away its oceans. They had gathered at the edge of human space, ready to deliver the collective's judgment. Their commanders were confident. After all, human space had been under surveillance for decades. Every human ship had been catalogued. Every weapon had been analyzed. Earth's military capabilities were well understood and completely insufficient. Admiral Corvin of the 7th Fleet stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Authority, watching the tactical displays with satisfaction. "Scan the approach vector one final time," he ordered. "I want confirmation that no human vessels are in position to interfere." The scanning officer bent over his console, then froze. His 3 eyes widened in confusion. "Admiral, I'm detecting something. Multiple contacts. But that's impossible. They're appearing from nowhere." Corvin moved to the display, irritation flickering across his features. "What do you mean, from nowhere?" The scanning officer's hands trembled as he worked. "They weren't there 30 seconds ago. Now there are hundreds of them. Thousands. They're just appearing out of empty space." On the main view screen, space itself seemed to tear open. One by one, ships materialized from nothing. Not through hyperspace jumps or warp tunnels, but simply fading into existence like ghosts becoming solid. They were massive. Some were larger than collective dreadnoughts. Their hulls were dark, almost black, covered with glowing lines of blue energy that pulsed like veins. "Identify those vessels," Corvin demanded. The computer struggled, cross-referencing its databases. When the answer came back, the bridge fell into shocked silence. Ships identified as Terran Defense Force classification. Warning: all vessels are listed as destroyed or decommissioned over 200 years ago. Current status: active and armed. Corvin felt ice form in his stomach. That's not possible. Those ships were accounted for. They were scrapped or lost in the expansion wars. But the evidence was right in front of him. Humanity's old fleet, the one that should have been dust and memory, had returned. And it had brought friends. The hidden truth 300 years ago, when humanity first reached for the stars, they had been optimistic. They believed the galaxy would welcome them with open arms. They were wrong. The first contact with alien civilizations had been peaceful. The second had been hostile. By the fifth contact, humanity realized a terrible truth. The galaxy was not kind to newcomers. Species that expanded too quickly were seen as threats. Civilizations that developed too independently were considered dangerous. So humanity made a choice. They would play by the galaxy's rules publicly, while preparing for the day those rules would be used against them. Project Vanguard was born in secret, hidden from every intelligence agency, concealed from every spy satellite. Its purpose was simple. If humanity ever faced extinction, if Earth ever went silent, the Vanguard would activate. And the Vanguard was not a defensive plan. It was a promise. If someone tried to destroy humanity, they would discover that humans did not die quietly. Captain Darius Chun stood on the bridge of the Vanguard one, watching the collective fleet through sensors that could see across half a star system. Around him, his crew worked with practiced efficiency. Men and women who had been born in one century and awakened in another. Soldiers who had sacrificed everything to be humanity's last line of defense. "Status report," Darius said quietly. His tactical officer responded immediately. "All Vanguard ships are in position. Bastion defense grids are online. Weapon systems are charged. We have target locks on their entire fleet." Darius nodded. "Open a channel." It's time they understood what they're facing. The voice from the past Admiral Corvin was still trying to understand what he was seeing when his communications officer called out in alarm. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission. It's coming from the lead human vessel. Audio only." Corvin steadied himself. "Put it through." The voice that filled the bridge was human, male, and spoke in perfect galactic standard with an accent that was centuries out of date. "Attention, collective forces. This is Captain Darius Chun of the Terran Vanguard Fleet. You were given a warning. You chose to ignore it. You demanded our surrender. We chose silence instead. Now you will learn why." Corvin found his voice. "This is Admiral Corvin of the Collective 7th Fleet. You are in violation of collective space and collective law. Surrender immediately or be destroyed." There was a pause, then something that might have been a laugh. "Admiral, you don't understand. You came here to destroy us, to eliminate humanity from the stars. Did you really think we would sit on Earth and wait for death? Did you think we would beg for mercy from those who showed us none?" Corvin bristled. "You are outnumbered 5-1. Your technology is inferior. Your world is already condemned. There is no scenario where you survive this." The human's voice remained calm, almost gentle. "You're right. We are outnumbered. But you made one critical mistake, Admiral. You assumed you knew everything about us. You assumed our silence was weakness. And you assumed that the ships you cataloged were all the ships we had." On the tactical display, more contacts appeared. Then more, then hundreds more. They emerged from behind moons, rose from planetary orbits, detached from asteroids where they had been hiding for centuries. The collective fleet suddenly found itself surrounded. The technology. They forgot Science Advisor Kelra watched from the collective command chamber as the battle data streamed in. What she was seeing should have been impossible. The human ships were using technology that violated known physics. They appeared and disappeared at will, not through conventional stealth, but through something else entirely. Phase shifting, her instruments suggested, the ability to move partially out of normal spacetime. Technology that the collective had theorized about but never achieved. How? She whispered. How did they develop this? Supreme Coordinator Thalin stood beside her, his ancient eyes reflecting the displays. They didn't develop it recently, he said quietly. They've had it for centuries. They simply made us believe they didn't. Every ship we catalogued, every weapon we analyzed, every technology we studied was what they wanted us to see. The real fleet was always hidden. On the screens, the human vessels moved with impossible precision. They weren't attacking yet. They were positioning themselves, surrounding the collective fleet like predators circling prey. The price of arrogance, Captain. Darius Chun watched the collective ships scramble to respond to threats from every direction. He felt no joy in this, only a deep, weary sadness. This didn't have to happen. If the collective had simply left humanity alone, none of this would have been necessary. But they had demanded submission. They had threatened extinction. And now they would learn the cost of their arrogance. Sir, his weapons officer said, we have firing solutions on all priority targets. Awaiting your command. Darius took a breath. The next words he spoke would determine the fate of thousands, maybe millions of lives. But he also knew that if he showed weakness now, if he allowed the collective to retreat and regroup, they would return with greater force. Humanity's survival demanded that this message be clear and absolute. Target their command ships only, he ordered. Fire one shot each. Make them precise. Across the human fleet, weapons that had been sleeping for centuries fired for the first time in ages. But these were not the crude missiles and energy beams the collective expected. These were weapons developed in secret, tested in hidden facilities, and perfected over generations. Phase disruption torpedoes, singularity cannons, quantum shear projectors. Names that meant nothing to anyone outside of Project Vanguard. Names that were about to become legendary. The collective command ships died instantly, not destroyed in explosions, simply erased from existence. One moment they were there. The next moment, space itself seemed to fold inward, and they were gone. Along with them went the admirals, the generals, and the commanders who had been so certain of their victory. The rest of the collective fleet froze. Their leadership was gone. Their command structure was shattered. And they were surrounded by an enemy. They didn't understand using technology they couldn't counter. The message sent. Home Supreme Coordinator Thalin watched the disaster unfold with a sinking heart. In less than 5 minutes, the collective had lost more ships than in the last 3 wars combined. And the humans still hadn't launched a full attack. This was a demonstration. A warning. He opened an emergency channel directly to Captain Chun. This is Supreme Coordinator Thalin. I am authorized to negotiate on behalf of the collective. Please cease fire. We will withdraw our forces. The human captain's response was immediate. Withdrawal is not negotiation, Coordinator. It is survival. Your fleet will leave human space immediately. You will not return. You will not send scouts. You will not conduct surveillance. You will leave us alone. Thalin's scales rippled with suppressed emotion. And if we refuse? There was a long silence. When Chun spoke again, his voice carried the weight of centuries. Then we will show you what humanity is truly capable of. The ships you see now, they are our defenders, our guardians. But behind them, sleeping in facilities you have never found, are our avengers. If you force us to wake them, what you lose here today will seem like mercy. Thalin believed him. Every instinct, every calculation, Every analysis told him that this human was not bluffing. "We will withdraw," he said quietly, "and we will leave you in peace." Captain Chun's voice softened slightly. "Good. Tell your collective something, Coordinator. Tell them that humanity never wanted war. We came to the stars looking for friends, for knowledge, for a place among the civilizations of the galaxy. But we learned quickly that the galaxy respects strength more than kindness. So we became strong. We built guardians to protect us, and we hoped we would never need to wake them." Fallon listened, something like understanding growing in his ancient heart. "But we forced you to wake them." The human sighed. "Yes, you demanded our surrender. You threatened our extinction. You left us no choice. But here is the truth, Coordinator. Even now, after everything, we do not want to destroy you. We want to be left alone. If your collective can accept that, then perhaps someday we can be neighbors instead of enemies." Fallon looked at the tactical displays, at the overwhelming force that humanity had kept hidden for so long, at the technology that made the collective's most advanced weapons look primitive. He made his decision. "The collective will leave you in peace," he said. "I will make certain of it." And with those words, the collective fleet began to withdraw. Slowly at first, then with increasing speed as the human ships made no move to pursue. They retreated from human space, carrying with them a story that would spread across the galaxy. A story about a species that had been silent, not from fear, but from preparation. A species that had built guardians in secret and weapons in shadow. A species that had learned the harsh lessons of galactic politics and adapted accordingly. The new, understanding Captain Darius Chun watched the collective fleet disappear into hyperspace. Around him, his crew was silent. There was no celebration, no cheering. They had done what was necessary, but they all understood the cost. They had revealed humanity's greatest secrets. The galaxy would never see them the same way again. "Captain," his communications officer said quietly, "we're receiving a transmission from Earth. It's the Secretary General." Darius straightened. "Put it through." The voice that filled the bridge was young, belonging to a leader who had been born long after Darius had gone to sleep. "Captain Chun, on behalf of Earth and all of humanity, I thank you. You saved our species today." Darius felt the weight of centuries pressing down on him. "We did what we promised to do, Secretary General. But the galaxy knows about us now. There will be consequences." The Secretary General's voice was firm. "Then we'll face them. Together. The age of hiding is over, Captain. If the galaxy wants to fear us, then so be it. But they'll also learn to respect us." Darius smiled faintly. "Permission to return home, sir?" There was warmth in the response. "Permission granted, Captain. Welcome back to the 24th century. We have a lot to show you." As the Vanguard fleet began its journey home, the solar system was ablaze with light. Every station, every colony, every hidden facility was active now. Humanity's secret was revealed. But instead of weakness, it had shown the galaxy something unexpected. Humanity was not just survivors. They were architects of their own destiny. They had planned for the worst, hoped for the best, and built guardians to ensure their future. And when the galaxy demanded their surrender, they had answered not with words, but with silence. A silence that spoke louder than any threat. A silence that said, "We are ready. We have always been ready. And if you come for us, you will learn that humanity does not beg. We do not surrender. We survive. And we remember." The collective learned this lesson at the cost of their pride and their ships. Other civilizations, watching from afar, learned it too. Humanity was no longer a young species stumbling through the stars. They were a power to be respected, to be negotiated with, to be left in peace. And in the quiet aftermath of the confrontation, as Captain Darius Chun and his fellow guardians finally returned home, the galaxy understood one final truth. When humans go silent, pay attention, because silence is not submission. Silence is preparation. And by the time you hear them speak again, it's already too late to stop what they've built in the darkness. Humanity had survived their first existential test. But as Darius looked out at the stars, he knew this was just the beginning. The galaxy was vast. It held wonders and terrors beyond imagination. And somewhere out there, new threats would eventually emerge. But he also knew that humanity would be ready, because that's what humans do. They adapt, they prepare, they survive, and they never, ever give up. The stars had fallen silent when Earth went dark. Now they blazed with renewed light. The light of a species that refused to die. The light of guardians awakened. The light of humanity, unbroken and unbound. And the galaxy would remember. Asterisk.